Well, hello everybody. I'm back. Are you happy to see me? It's been a long time. I know. I know it's been a long time. It's been a whole week. A whole week. But good things come to those who wait. And you all have waited. So here I am. The good things. There's Gothawk. How are you doing this evening? I'm doing fine. As always, Thursday's my Friday, and I am not on call. So things are good. Things are looking up. On the weekend with tons of things to do that I'll never ever probably get done. Yeah, makes it interesting. Let me turn that off to see what I can get done. So anything I get done is a blessing and a surprise. There you go. There's Robert. So tonight's show, it's I don't know. A lot of these things I come across, listen to other podcasts, and one of the big ones I'll listen to is the Joe Rogan Experience. JRE podcast. I like to listen to that. He talks to all kinds of people. And one of the persons he was talking to not too long ago was talking about they thought the moon landing was a hoax. And they had, you know, reasons why they believed it was a hoax. And I'd heard this stuff before. They made it on a soundstage. You know, they filmed it out in the desert. All this stuff. So supposedly there's footage out there because I listen. You know, podcasts to me, I listen to. So if I turn one of these shows, one of these live streams into a podcast, in my mind, people just, turn it on with a set of headphones on while, like me, like when I'm mowing the yard or I'm doing some other things, you know, and just listen to the conversation. And I don't really watch, the video. Otherwise, I mean, it's like, sitting down watching a TV show or YouTube channel or, a live stream at night. But I like to listen to them because, I can do other things. A lot of people like to listen to audiobooks. I've listened to a few of those. You listen to music. That's kind of where I'm at with these things. And I hear interesting things and you have interesting people that have different, ideas. So, he had a gentleman on and I don't remember his name. Did kind of a quick search, but on these listings for his shows, none of them says this is the one that Milo listened to, and this is the guy that thinks it is, the moon landing's a hoax. So I tried to listen to Terrence Howard, and that blew my brain. I didn't get to listen to too much of that. But anyway, and so tonight I thought, well, I just do a little dive into, is the moon landing a hoax? Supposedly now China has landed the first I don't want to call it a spacecraft, the first explorer, the first man-made object to land on call it the far side, the dark side, the side we never get to see, part of the moon. And I did a little search on that. I'll show you some of the results. Something about the footprints my friend thinks are fake. Yeah, I've seen, we'll look at some of these Wikipedia things. But there was one point that he made that really made me go, okay, now we're talking about something here. How could they have overcome this one obstacle, this one hurdle, back in the 60s and 70s? Well, we'll talk about it. And I can see kind of both sides of this thing. Uh, every government, America's government included, does some really underhanded things. They're not right. Uh, just for the sake of everybody. We've all experienced that in our lifetime. Anybody that's old enough to be listening to this and understanding what I'm saying and the words coming out of my mouth has experienced the government doing something for society's own good. We're the big guys, we're the parents here, and we're going to take care of you fellas and gals. Just sit back, nothing to fear. Nothing to fear at all. So, back in the 60s and 70s and 50s, you know, it was call it a simpler time. It was a more of people head in the sand time. That I would like to think of it as that. People had their heads down, they were doing their work, they had very limited access to information. They trusted what they got because this was America. This wasn't Cuba, this wasn't Russia or China. This was America where you're supposed to be able to say the truth and you should say the truth. So anyway, back then, limited access. America's doing something great. Let's all get behind it, and it's wonderful. And why not? Why not get behind that? Was it propaganda? Now people are saying it's propaganda. It was just all a thing to, oh, look over there. Don't look at this junk that we've done and is going on, the bad stuff we're doing. Look at this great thing that's going on up there. Wouldn't you like to be up there? Wouldn't you like to be an astronaut? Why can't you see any stars? Yeah, well, because the stars went home. The stars just went home when the dudes come out. They were scared, Dudes come out and landed on the moon. It was like, ugh. So they pulled themselves in, shut the light off. That's easy to explain. Easy to explain. I don't know. We'll look at those. And what's funny? I thought for sure I could just do a Google search and get these, this side, that side, this side, that side of why, But what I get mostly, we'll look at all these pages, the search results. What you get mostly is why that saying, that thought, the moon landing was a hoax, why that's a conspiracy theory. That's pretty much, I use Bing. Why? Just because this computer I've got is what was on there. I don't mess with any of this. I don't. This wasn't a computer that I got specifically to do this. This is just one that that happened to fall into my lap, and I like it. Why? Because it's got like neon lights in it and lots of fans, and it's got alien green lights and all this other kind of stuff. I just like it. It's old. It doesn't have the power. It's running like, I don't know, man, like Windows 7 Pro Home Edition. I don't know. It's, barely able to keep up with anything these days. So I use Bing. That's what was on it. I just, why bother? Why bother? Where was I? Old computers. Bing. Okay, so that's just what I use, and that's just what I get. I just get all the, well, that's a hoax. That's, oh, don't look at that. Let's look at the positive side of this. So anyway, we'll look at it, and I'm a product of those ages, and I want to believe it. I don't want to think it's a hoax. I don't want to think it's a lie. I want to believe that man went to the moon and hopped around and, kicked a soccer ball to Mars. Is that one of the things? Hit a golf ball. That's what it was. They hit a golf ball and choked the whale with it. I mean, Why not? Robert, maybe humans came from Mars. I found out something else listening to this dude. And sooner or later, I'm going to find this guy's name. And I'm going to come up with it. See, I'm trying to go through in my mind, listen to them in an order, and I skipped that dude because he blew my brain. A hunting guide. It wasn't a pair. Billy Carson. I was thinking it was Billy Carson, but when I looked it up, it wasn't. He was something totally different. Totally different. Let's see what. Anyway, let's get on with this thing. Quit messing with that. Let's go with what we know. And we don't know a lot. We look and guess. We look and guess at a bunch. Crazy circus, crazy circus. All right, here we go. Let's get over here. We're just gonna put this up because I did a couple of different searches. No, okay. So now this, I'm gonna go real quick, make a jump. I was gonna look at this was going to be the show. The first pictures taken of the far side or the dark side of the moon. How do you take a picture in the dark? I don't know, but anyway. During the space mission, they talked about, well, those look like structures down there. And then, supposedly China just landed that unmanned reconnaissance vehicle, whatever it is, on the dark side of the moon. Can we take some of them back? Start with certain politicians. Yeah, taking them all back to Mars. We could send them up there and see. So I started looking at this, and here's what I got when you look at China landing a rover thing on the dark side of the moon. Immediately, right off the top, strange hidden structures hundreds of meters deep discovered. China's Chang'e 4 mission rover has helped scientists visualize hidden structures deep below the surface of the moon. Scientists mapped 1,000 feet of hidden structures deep below the moon surface. Hidden structures discovered deep beneath the dark side of the moon. New moon map reveals structures hidden beneath the lunar surface. Come on, people. This one was in August 27th, 2023. Even a man with his head buried under a rock in the sand of the Sahara Desert would have heard if they had discovered structures on the moon. What kind of structures? Okay, wait a minute. Maybe I'm all wrong. It could be a rock structure. Just because it says it's a structure doesn't mean it's a place where you could hang your hat, or things could be stored there or put inside of there. Aren't like volcanic structures? Don't they create like structures? So maybe it's a play on words, and they're just wanting us to think like me in my brain that when you say structures, it's like, well, shoot, man, there's a whole neighborhood up there. There's an army base There's a army structure up there. See, and here's, this is supposed to be a reputable place, MSN, you know, hidden structures discovered beneath the dark side of the moon. Then when you like open that critter up, if it opens up and it doesn't throw a big old virus all over your screen. Scientists have just uncovered billions of years worth of secrets buried beneath the surface of the moon. 2018 change 4 lander. See, it's 2018. What? I thought it just happened. Earlier this month, the change 4 findings were finally published, and the world was invited to delve deep into the history of this cherished natural satellite. Revealed that the top 130 feet of the lunar surface are made up of multiple layers of dust, soil, and broken rock. Hello? Hidden within these layers is a crater which has formed a large object slammed into the moon, according to the Jane Fang. So, they hook you with that hidden structures, and then they get in there and go, hey, you know what? Something hit the moon a long time ago, made this big old dent in it. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So, I started reading this junk, and I said, no. No. Now here's something that I found too. It was really kind of interesting. There's 8 planets in the solar system, and they always like to take what is it? Pluto is a dwarf planet. They say, it's not a planet. Yeah, it's a planet. No, it's not a planet. Yeah, it's a planet. All right. So I also found out that there are like 3 or 4 dwarf planets that are also mixed up in the our solar system. Let's just, where did I see that? Planet sizes. Okay, Earth, Mars, dwarf planet Ceres. How do you say that? So it's between Mars and Jupiter. Okay, then you go Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, dwarf planet Pluto. Right, that's the one that's like, maybe, no, maybe, maybe, no, maybe. And then outside of that is QME, Make, and Eris. So I didn't realize that there was a dwarf planet really this close to Earth. And I thought that was very interesting because supposedly it has water on it. Never heard that before. Never heard that before. All right? So, never heard it. Thought that was interesting. The hollow moon, the bell ring. Yeah, I've heard that. Rock form is a structure. Yeah, I know. See, I think they hooked me just like they hook a lot of people with that buried structures under the moon. That pissed me off. So it was like, that ain't true. I can't just, So, first close-ups of the moon. We're not going to look at that. Planets, we're not going to look at that. All right, so let's just go ahead and do our little Bing search on, was the NASA moon landing a hoax? Was the NASA moon landing a hoax? See, right off the bat, BBC, come on now. Moon landing conspiracy theories aren't true. History, the wildest moon landing conspiracy theories debunked. Moon landing conspiracy theories, Wikipedia. Well, this is where we're going to look. They're, they're above board and non-biased. Why do they believe some people, see, there's no stars in the background? Who asked that question? We'll look at that. Why is that? Moon landing hoax still lives on, but why? Well, because it's fun. It's not fun. I, fact check. Video shows movie footage, not proof of moons. Some social media users are sharing a video that implies NASA crew moon landings were fake. The video features a montage of people in astronaut suits on a moon-like landscape. So poor old Garthok with the alien name, he claims that he's anti-vaxxer, chemtrails, and flat earthers. The the fun one thing about that I understand about flat earther proposal is that our planet is the only planet that's flat. I think a lot of them agree that, oh yeah, Jupiter and Mars, all of they're round. Yeah, yeah, that's okay. Only the Earth is flat. I don't know. Why is that? All right. Well, let's go into the only reason I pick Wikipedia is because I know how you take the stuff there with a grain of salt, and you look at it and it breaks it down with some links. Moon hoax redirects here, not to be confused with Great Moon hoax. All right. 6 crewed landings, 69 through 72, were fake. The 12 Apollo astronauts did not actually land on the moon. Various groups and individuals have made claims since the mid-70s that NASA and others knowingly misled the public into believing the landings happened by manufacturing, tampering with, or destroying evidence, including photos, telemetry tapes, radio and TV transmissions, and moon rock samples. So here's one thing that gets me, and I didn't used to think like this, not until what? Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I was kind of a head in the sand kind of dude, man. I got my own life to worry about. And you cats worry about whether the moon landing was fake or anything like that. But since the COVID thing, everything is like, wait a minute, hold on. So here's what I say about moon. Well, they brought moon rocks back. That's what you say. That's what they say. Have I ever held one? No. I have I held a rock? Yeah. Have I ever held a meteorite? I don't know, because why? I wouldn't know a meteorite if I held it in my hand. How would I know a moon rock if I held it? Well, they'd tell you it was a moon rock. Okay. Now we're just, saying stupid things. Sure, they're going to tell me it's a moon rock. How do I know it's a moon rock? Well, scientists say. No. You see where I'm going with that? And I understand. If that's my stance, then you can't change my mind. Only way I could change my mind, technically, would be I take a moon rock, I take it to a scientist, and I say, how do you know this is a moon rock and not some kind of rock that I dug up out of my ground? And let him explain to me the science and actually see him test it and say, well, see all these levels, see all this chart, see all this junk in there? That crap ain't on Earth. That's only on the moon that we know of. Yeah, had displayed moon rocks, right? So, they're locked up. You can't get your hands on one. Who could get your hands on a moon rock? Nobody. Why would you want to? I mean, you're looking for fossils. You can't bust it up and grind it into powder looking for stuff. It's a moon rock, right? All right. Now, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, because I haven't really looked at it. I don't think they deny that men went into space, right? I don't think they deny that. I think basically what they're saying is that when they, on certain missions, they didn't go all the way to the moon and they didn't walk on it. So they're not denying that they didn't take pictures of Earth and space and all this other kind of stuff. Maybe some of them are. Maybe they're saying the whole uh, program was fake and they didn't shoot anybody into space, you know. But I'm thinking of the 70s. There wasn't a lot of sci-fi, CGI, computer-generated graphics in the late 60s, early 70s. So when that bad mamma jamma, the re-entry vehicles coming through Earth and they're videotaping it from down on Earth, and you see the trail of smoke on that thing, and it splashes into the ocean, and the dudes get in the helicopter and go out there and jump in the water and open the tank, and there he is. I don't know. I don't know. Could that all have been fake? You know? Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to this where people are talking about something they may know about. Okay. Much third-party evidence for the landing exists and detailed rebuttals to the hoax claims have been made. Since the late 2000s, high-definition photos taken by the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, or LRO, of the Apollo landing sites have captured the lunar module descent stages and the tracks left by the astronauts. In 2012, images were released showing 5 of the 6 Apollo missions' American flags erected on the moon, still standing. The exception is that of Apollo 11, which has lain on the lunar surface since being blown over by the Lunar Module Ascent Propulsion System. Despite the fact that they are demonstrably false and universally regarded as pseudoscience, opinion polls taken in various locations between 1994 and 2009 have shown that between 6% and 20% of Americans, 25% of Brits, and 28% of Russians surveyed believed that the crew landings were faked. Even as late as 2001, the Fox television network documentary Conspiracy Theory, Did We Land on the Moon? Claimed NASA faked the first landing in '69 to win the space race. Now, see, that comes back to, why would they do it? Well, to make Americans feel good, to beat the Russians at something, you know what I mean? So, an early and influential book about the subject of moon landing conspiracy, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle, was self-published in '76 by Bill Kaysing, a former U.S. Navy officer with a Bachelor of Arts in English. Despite having no knowledge of rockets or technical writing, Kaysing was hired as a senior technical writer in 1956 by Rocketdyne, the company that built the F-1 engines used on the Saturn V rocket. He served as head of the technical publications unit at the company's propulsion field laboratories until 1963. The many allegations that Kaysing's book effectively began discussion of the moon landing being fake. The book claims that the chance of successful crew landing on the moon was calculated to be 0.0017%, and that despite close monitoring by the USSR, it would have been easier for NASA to fake the moon landings than really to get there. So that is one of the things. Yeah, it was a Cold War era, diversionary tactics. Let's get everybody behind, America. But like I said, if it was real or faked, it was, for propaganda. So it would, if they did it for real, then they really wanted people to feel great about America and they've accomplished something. And if it was fake, they still wanted people to really feel good about America, that we accomplished something, even though it was behind the curtain, it was fake. So, but anyway, that was one of the things that kind of, blew my mind. And if you've ever seen the movie, let me look that up real quick. Uh, let's see, movie of Lady at Math. Let's see. This is way out there, but we watched the movie. All right. Katherine Johnson, a NASA mathematician who inspired Hidden Figures, How Black Women Did the Math That Put Men on the Moon. All right, so I watched this, and it was, I don't know. You know, I watch these things thinking I want to watch something that's based on a true story, and then I always come away with it of a feeling like, man, I wish they would tell me 75% of this was true, or 50% was true, 50% was false, because I always wonder. But Hidden Figures was a really good movie, and it talked about how it led you to believe how one particular woman got herself in a position, and the other ladies, where they did all the calculations manually to figure out the trajectory and the angles and all this stuff, so that, you know, the astronauts could rendezvous with the moon at the speeds and at the locations and all that stuff they needed to do. Very interesting movie. But that was one of the things that, you know, if you go to a conspiracy theory and you go out there, that is one of the things, you know, the telephones that we have now carried around in our pockets just make the computers they use to make the moon landing happen look like rocks. I mean, literally look like rocks. An abacus. You know what I'm saying? That is how much computing power we currently have in our pockets compared to what they used to send people to the moon and back and let them live. All right. So that's one thing that's a huge leap for anybody. If you sit down and you start thinking about, that's a lot of problems. I've never seen this number. I knew it was small, but that's like really, really, really small number of possibilities of doing it. In 1980, the Flat Earth Society, led by Garthog the Impossible, accused NASA of faking the landings, arguing that they were staged by Hollywood with Walt Disney sponsorship, based on a script by Arthur C. Clarke and directed by Stanley Kubrick. Folklorist Linda Day suggests that the writer Peter Hyams' film Capricorn 1 in '78, which shows a hoax journey to Mars in a spacecraft that looked identical to the Apollo craft, might have given a boost to the hoax theory's popularity in the post-Vietnam era. All right? So here's some of the reasons they think they would have done it. The space race. Motivation for the United States to engage the Soviet Union in a space race can be traced to the Cold War. Landing on the moon was viewed as a national and technological accomplishment that would generate worldwide acclaim. All right, hoax theory debunker Phil Platt says in a 2002 book, Bad Astronomy, that the Soviets, with their own competing moon program, an extensive intelligence network, and a formidable scientific community able to analyze NASA data, would have cried foul if the United States tried to fake a moon landing, especially since their own program had failed. Proving a hoax would have been a huge propaganda win for the Soviets. Instead, far from calling the landings a hoax, the third edition, 70 through 79, of the Great Soviet Encyclopedia, which was translated into English, contained many articles reporting the landings as factual, such as the article on Neil Armstrong. Indeed, there's an article on space exploration describes the Apollo 11 landings the third historic event of the space age. So, I mean, there's a positive to the things actually happening. Is like if you've got a competitor, you know they're going to be out there smelling and sniffing for a cheat. Every corner is going to be, looked at. No corners could be cut or faked. They're going to know it. They're going to prove it, and they would love. I'm surprised they didn't even say, "Oh, that's a fake" when it happened, even if it did happen, right? So, is that a check mark in the favor that it did happen? Why would the Russians say that it happened and admit defeat so openly in their encyclopedia? Or here we go. We could go back to my theory of like, I want to see the daggone encyclopedia, people. I want to get on eBay and I want to look at a Russian seller selling an encyclopedia, and then we'll buy it, have it translated, and see if it's actually in there. That's what we ought to do. Want somebody to do that? Get back to me on that. Have your people call my people, and we'll chit chat about that. So the Soviets, conspiracist Bart Sobral, responded, asserting that the Soviets did not have the capability to track deep spacecraft until late in '72, immediately after which the last 3 Apollo missions were abruptly canceled. Those missions were canceled not abruptly, but for cost-cutting reasons. The announcements were made in January and September of 1970, 2 full years before the late '72 claimed by Sobral. In fact, Soviets had been sending uncrewed spaceships to the moon since 1959, and during 1962, deep space tracking facilities were introduced at IP-15 and wherever the Euryscus and IP-16 in the Crimea Peninsula. In May of 2023, Dmitry Rogozin, former Director General of the Russian Space Agency, expressed doubt that U.S. astronauts landed on the moon. He complained not of receiving a satisfactory answer when he asked his agency to provide evidence. He said his colleagues at the Roscosmos was angry about his questions and did not want to undermine cooperation with NASA. All right, so NASA had lots of funding and prestige. The American War in Vietnam, that was another reason. They, like I said, look here, not there. Don't pay attention to Vietnam more. We landed on the moon. We're going to land on the moon. We've done it. Don't look over there. Look here. Many moon landing hoax claims and rebuttals. Many moon landing conspiracy theories have been proposed, alleging that the landings either did not occur and NASA staff lied, or that the landings did occur, but not in the way that has been reported. Conspiracists have focused on perceived gaps or inconsistencies in the historical records of the mission. Let's see. According to James Longiski, the conspiracy theories are impossible because of their size and complexity. The conspiracy would have to involve more than 400,000 employees who worked at the Apollo program for nearly 10 years. The 12 men who walked on the moon, the 6 others who flew with them as command module pilots, and another 6 astronauts who orbited the moon. So, the guy on Joe Rogan was basically saying no, that NASA was so compartmentalized, that not everybody had the full picture of what was going on. So really the number of people that would know that it was a hoax was really very limited, because they only had, the people in the command room. And it was only just a couple of people that really had the computers that had the capabilities to do the tracking and to do the reporting and all those kind of things. And so the number of people that you would have to get to go along with this was really smaller than what you would think. It was what this guy was talking about here. You know, all the people that worked there, the people, 400,000 employees who worked on the Apollo project for 10 years. So, personally think the government found something on the moon and got scared. Now we're interested again. Not scared, maybe bored. I'm sure if it's a life form, we'll be sending it money and building a Dollar General store. Yep, building a dollar store on the moon. That's next. All right. Da-da-da. Some photos, all right. Moon landing conspiracies focus heavily on NASA photos. They point to oddities in photos and films taken on the moon. Photography experts, including those unrelated to NASA, have replied that the oddities are consistent with what should be expected from a real moon landing and are not consistent with tweaking of studio imagery. Some main arguments set in plain text and counter arguments set in italicized are listed below. The main arguments are in plain text. The counter arguments are in. All right. So here, let's look. One, in some photos, the crosshairs appear to be behind objects. The camera was fitted with a clear glass plate with a reticle etched on it, making it impossible for any photographed object to appear in front of the grid. Conspiracists often use this evidence to suggest that objects were pasted over the photographs and hence obscure the reticle. So the rebuttal is the effect only appears in copied and scanned photos, not any originals. It is caused by overexposure. The bright white areas of the emulsion bleed over the thin black crosshairs. The crosshairs are only about 0.004 inches thick, and emulsion would have only bled about half that much to fully obscure it. So here's one. Oh, see some of the numbers in the way. Let's look at that. You can't see it. This one, it looks like the little white box. See, is the crosshairs here, and it's gone beside the box. In the original photo, here, it's obvious that the crosshair is over the little box, the little suitcase thing. So here the crosshair is missing from the flag. See how there's crosshairs here, 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 no crosshair. This is obscured crosshairs. There's up here's, they're like watermarks. All right. So then down here they show a close-up where you can enlarge it. Crosshairs are sometimes rotated or in the wrong place. This is a result of popular photos being cropped and or rotated for aesthetic impact. The quality of photographs is implausibly high. There are many poor quality photos taken by the Apollo astronauts. NASA chose to publish only the best samples. The Apollo astronauts used high-resolution Hasselblad 500 EL cameras with Carl Zeiss optics and a 70mm medium format film magazine. Here we go. Who said this earlier? There are no stars in any of the photos. The Apollo 11 astronauts also stated in post-mission press conferences that they did not remember seeing any stars during extravehicular activities. Conspiracists contend that NASA chose not to put the stars into the photos because astronomers would have been able to use them to determine whether the photos were taken from the Earth or the Moon by means of identifying them and comparing the celestial position and parallax to what would be expected either observation sites. All right, so the astronauts were talking about naked eye sightings of stars during the lunar daytime. They regularly sighted stars through the spacecraft navigation optics while aligning their inertial reference platforms. Stars are rarely seen in Space Shuttle Mirror Earth observation photos, or even photos taken at sporting events held at night. The light from the sun or outer space in Moon-Earth system is at least as bright as the sunlight that reaches Earth's surface. On a clear day at noon, no cameras used for imaging objects illuminated by sunlight are set for daylight exposure. The dim light of the stars simply does not provide enough exposure to record visible images. Camera settings can turn a well-lit background to black when the foreground object is brightly lit. So that's their deal. The stars are not as bright as the moon's surface. Well, I know even through Earth's atmosphere you can see stars, but what they're saying is that the subject matter is so bright in the foreground, and the apertures, are so closed down to handle that light. The little light from the stars, would be blacked out. But it's almost like we have light pollution. You would think in the country that you should be able to go out and you're seeing the whole stars, but still we're not, because supposedly, and I don't know, as a kid maybe I saw it, but you're supposed to be able to go how bad is light pollution for seeing stars? So if you didn't have light pollution, you should be able to go out and see the stars. I mean, like the daggone galaxy. You should be able to see that. I never see that many stars. I don't see those purple clouds in the skies or any of that stuff. I don't know where you could go and see that. To me, this is not. Let's just look at this real quick. Let me turn on the sound if there's going to be sound. Light pollution level 6. Y'all hear that? That might be loud. Right, so this is light pollution level 5. I can't tell. Why would that stupid line go away? Level 4, Pigeon Point Lighthouse, California. I don't see any of that stuff in my night sky at all. Level 3, Crater Lake National Park, Oregon. I don't see any of that. Do you all see any of that in the sky at night? I don't. You know what? And I think I live in a place where there'd be that much light pollution. Level 2, Alaska National Park, California. So, what they're basically saying is, the lunar surface is so bright that the background is black because the aperture change takes place. So, I don't know. I've never been to space, so I have no idea. The angle and the color of shadows are inconsistent. This suggests that artificial light was used. Now, this is what that other guy talked about. He talked about the shadows were, at 90 degrees and stuff, so that you had to have a light source here and a light source here to make those shadows intersect like at a 90 degrees. Shadows on the moon are complicated by reflected light, uneven ground, wide-angle lens distortion, and lunar dust. There are several light sources: the sun, sunlight reflected from the earth, sunlight reflected from the moon's surface, and sunlight reflected from the astronauts and the lunar module. Light from these sources is scattered by lunar dust in many directions, including into shadows. Shadows falling into craters and hills may appear longer, shorter, and distorted. Furthermore, shadows display the properties of vanishing point perspective, leading them from converged to point on the horizon. The theory was further debunked on the Mythbusters episode, NASA Moon Landing. All right. There are identical backgrounds and photos which, according to their captions, were taken miles apart. This suggests that a painted background was used. Backgrounds are not identical, just similar. The number of photos taken is implausibly high, up to one photo per 50 seconds. Simplified gear with fixed settings allowed 2 photos a second. Many were taken immediately after each other as stereo pairs for panorama sequences. The calculation, 1 per 50 seconds, was based on a lone astronaut on the surface and does not take into account that there were 2 astronauts sharing the workload and simultaneously taking photographs during the extravehicular activities. So one thing I didn't ever see, I never saw an astronaut that had a camera around his neck, you know? I don't. The photos contain artifacts like the 2 seemingly matching C's on a rock on the ground. These may be labeled studio props. The C-shaped objects are most likely printed imperfections and do not appear in the original film from the camera. It has been suggested that the C is a coiled hair. So, if we go back to that, you can come up with all kinds of, explain away things. Why? Because I don't have access to the original film, the original negative film that they used to make these pictures from. Who does? You know? It would take, Geraldo Rivera to go to NASA's archive and sit down with their microfiche machine and look at these photographs under light with a crew and say, this is not there, this is the same, this is not the same, that's not there, here's this. You see what I'm saying? It's just, so much of that is, trust me, this is what it is. It's a little curly Q. It's a little curly hair. It's nothing. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see here. Ooh, there's nothing to see here. I mean, that's really cool, though. But how, you know what I'm saying? Who's to say? Does it, does that look like the horizon of the moon? Could that be fake? I don't know. But it's not mine. I've never been to the moon. Here's the one they say are the 2 or the C's. And you can clearly see that right there. I can also clearly see the crosshair. I don't know. I think it's an ear. What do you think? I think it's an ear. And that looks like a face. That's a face on a moon rock right there, buddy. See, here's his nose, and there's his eye, and his jaw, and here's his gills. Yeah, and his name is Carl. C for Carl. It's a flap door. Could be. Could be. So here's a good one. A resident of Perth, Western Australia, a woman named Una Ronald, said that for 2 or 3 seconds she saw a Coca-Cola bottle roll across the lower right-hand quadrant of her television screen that was displaying the live broadcast of the Apollo 11 EVA. She also said that several letters appeared in the Western Australian discussing the Coca-Cola bottle incident within 10 days of the lunar landing. No such newspaper reports or recordings have been found. Ronald's claims have only been relayed by one source. There are also flaws in the story. The statement that she had to stay up late to watch the moon landing live is easily discounted by many witnesses in Australia who watched the landing in the middle of the daytime. So let's see. Hot spots look like large sun spots of the sun. Who filmed Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon? Cameras on the lunar module did. The Apollo TV camera mounted on the motorized equipment stowage system of the Apollo lunar module gave a view from the exterior. While still on the module's landing ladder steps, Armstrong deployed the EMSA from the side of the lunar module, unpacking, amongst other things, the TV camera. The TV camera was then powered on and a signal transmitted back to Earth. This meant that upwards of 600 million people on Earth could watch the live feed with only a very slight delay. Similar technology was also used on subsequent Apollo missions. It was also filmed from an automatic 16mm movie camera mounted in the window of the lunar module. But a lot of TV production going on. Now, if you think about it too, is I'm getting ready to walk out on the moon. Okay, and here they are. I'm an astronaut. I have been through some of the most rigorous physical training and technological training that my life and everybody else's lives depend on it. And here's what they're saying. Forget about jumping out of the moon. You're on the moon. Forget about all that. Unpack the cameras, dude. You got to take pictures. This is all about pictures. Is that a conspiracy theory? You know, if you were going to go to the moon, forget about the cameras, man. Just come back alive. Take a picture of your feet. Take a picture of the moon, the Earth. You know, take a picture of the landing vehicle, but just stay alive. Let's collect some samples and stay alive. You know, I don't know. Is that an argument to say, well, they filmed it on Earth and they took all these camera angles and they did it 3 and 4 times and they said, no, that didn't look right. You know, let's go back and, you know, there's where part of the problem would be. It's not people that work for NASA, right? It would be the people, the film crew, that you would have to worry about blabbing. I mean, the camera operators, the people that are, you know, working on the film, the ones that are tweaking this image and making sure there's no Coca-Cola bottles rolling by, the production crew, as I would think, with who you'd have to worry about being the weak link, you know, not some poor old dude that's, you know, helping the astronauts climb into the rocket. It would be the production crew. As far as I know, you know, nobody has came forward to say, hey, you know what? Well, now, I'll take that back. I think there was somebody that came forward and said, hey, you know what? I filmed part of that. All right. So, been going at it almost an hour. So there was one other thing that really kind of, you know, like the math thing, how did they get the trajectory, the odds of actually making it happen like the first time without killing everybody there and back, and then making it happen repeatedly. with not killing everybody multiple times, that seems a little far-fetched. Then the Van Allen radiation belts. All right? And it's right here. Let me see. I don't know if I do this before. Did I do this? Hold on. Let me do that. Let me scrunch that down a little bit. Oh, look at that. All right. So, here we go. The environment. The astronauts could not have survived the trip because of exposure to radiation from the Van Allen radiation belt and the galactic ambient radiation. Some conspiracists have suggested that the Starfish Prime, a high-altitude nuclear test in 1962, formed another intense layer of the Van Allen belt. Yeah, they exploded, the United States, I think, or Russia, exploded nuclear weapons in space. I guess just to see what would happen. I mean, it's not like, what happens if you catch space on fire, dude? It's just, do you know what's out there? Let's just throw a dang on nuclear weapon out there and explode it above Earth and see if it just blows space up. You know, maybe it did. Maybe it could have just blown space up. You know, chain reaction. Who knows? There are two main Van Allen belts, the inner belt and the outer belt, and a transient third belt. The inner belt is the more dangerous one, containing energetic protons. The outer one has less dangerous, low-energy electrons. The Apollo spacecraft passed through the inner belt in a matter of minutes and the outer belt in about an hour and a half. The astronauts were shielded from the ionizing radiation by the aluminum hulls of the spacecraft. Furthermore, the orbital transfer trajectory from Earth to the Moon through the belts was chosen to lessen radiation exposure. Even Van Allen, the discoverer of the Van Allen belts, rebutted the claims that radiation levels were too harmful for the Apollo mission. Phil Platt cited an average dose of less than 1 rem, which is equivalent to an ambient radiation received by living at sea level for 3 years. The total radiation received on the trip was about the same as allowed for workers in a nuclear energy field for a year, and not much more than what space shuttle astronauts received. So that is debatable. So not too long ago, the Van Allen belts were reevaluated. Why? That was the question. Why go back up into the space and reevaluate how radioactive the Van Allen belts are? They should have known that before they sent the astronauts there. But they're saying, well, they didn't really, because they didn't have to know what the radiation was, because the astronauts never passed through it because it was a hoax. And it would have killed them. It would have gave them radiation poison because, A, aluminum is not a very good shielding metal against radiation. They said it wouldn't have worked. Yeah, it just, aluminum is not, and it's, thin, whatever. So, let's see. There was one on that. All right, so how NASA worked around Earth's radiation belts to land Apollo 11 on the moon. So this is the last thing I think I'll look at, because this is the radiation thing kind of made a lot more sense to me than camera angles and all that other kind of stuff. The flag flapping, the no stars, the fact that they had to calculate down to I won't say millisecond because I have no idea if that's true, but down to a really close time frame to even get them to the point where they could land safely, theoretically land safely on the moon, and then to take off from the moon at exactly the time they would need to then get back to the Earth without running out of gas. Because you know what? You don't want a rocket with no gas in it. No, you don't want that. I know what's wrong. There ain't no gas in it. There you go. You just float off into space. All right, this year, 2019, commemorates the 50th anniversary of one of humanity's most incredible achievements thus far, of people physically reaching the moon. On July 20, 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the natural satellite and broadcast a live view of the lunar surface, Earth, space, and astronauts working on the surface. Yet still there are doubts these days that humans actually achieved the feat. For example, the following question appeared on Quora on August 23, 2018. When will the existence of the Van Allen belt and our ability to penetrate its harsh radiation with today's technology force NASA to admit it faked the moon landing? So what surrounds Earth? Some people believe we never went to the moon because of the existence of the Van Allen radiation belts. The idea is that any astronaut en route to outer space has to pass through these belts, and in so doing, they would receive a lethal dose of radiation. These belts are the result of Earth's magnetic field working like a giant magnet trap or an accelerator confining the particles of the solar, mostly wind, and sometimes accelerating them on their orbits within the belt to nearly the speed of light. These belts are shaped like two nested donuts. Their size changes depending on the solar activity and sometimes on how we model them. The inner belts start at an altitude of 600 to 1600 kilometers according to different sources and extend till 9600 or 13,000 kilometers. The range of the outer belt varies similarly from 13,500 to 19,000 to about 40,000. There is a gap between these belts called the slot region, which is generally devoid of energetic particles. Sometimes a third transient appears in this region. Geosynchronous communication satellites orbit just inside the outer edge of the outer radiation belt, and the lower Earth orbits where the International Space Station and the Hubble Space Telescope are is just below the inner edge of the inner belt. The radiation belts are not the only structures there's a structure again surrounding Earth. Starting at about 1,000 kilometers at the very edge of the inner radiation belt and partially pushing into the outer belt, a cloud of charged particles called the plasmasphere. This is yet another layer of protection Earth has against space radiation. Electrons nearly at light speed in the outer belt move laterally along the magnetic field lines around Earth. A plasmasphere phenomenon called the plasmaspheric hiss, which very low frequency electromagnetic waves prevents them from moving down close to the Earth. Blah, blah, blah. The story of how these belts were discovered is equally, if not more interesting, in the 1950s. Let's go on to see how we got through it. Hmm. 2 months earlier, Explorer 3 confirmed Explorer 1's data. Explorer 4. All right. After establishing that radiation belts do contain lots of highly energetic particles, protons, and electrons, scientists realized they presented a problem for humans and satellites in space. The obvious solution was to limit orbits to below the inner belt, which begins at about 600 kilometers above Earth's surface. The first recommendations for dealing with the Van Allen belts on a possible mission to the moon came in the summer of 1960. At a NASA Space Task Group meeting, scientists suggested that a moderate amount of protection could shield the crew from the outer Van Allen belt particles. In '62, Van Allen, believing that protons of the inner belt could seriously threaten human space flight missions, suggested clearing them away by setting a nuclear bomb off near the outer belt. The particles would then have an extra energy to escape Earth's magnetic field. The Americans conducted a series of nuclear tests in the 1960s called Operation Dominic. It included a group of atmospheric tests called the fishbowl events designed to understand how nuclear weapon debris would interact with Earth's magnetic field in the event of a nuclear war. But the highest of the fishbowl events called the Starfish Prime, a 1.4 megaton nuclear bomb detonated at 400 kilometers on July 9, 1962. However, instead of clearing the inner Van Allen belt, it actually added more radiation to it. The Soviet tests in the same year increased the intensity of the inner belt by a million times and also destroyed several satellites that were already there. I don't, dudes, they just, a few decades earlier had just destroyed, obliterated 2 human cities with these things. And here they are shooting them up into outer space and adding to the radiation surrounding the Earth. Oh, come on, let's see how we got over this. Further knowing the belt's absence above the poles, the altitude of the lower edge of the inner belt, and the location of the South Atlantic anomaly, where doses are at high 40 millirads a day and altitude of 210 kilometers, allowed NASA to design the Apollo translunar injection orbit in a way that the spacecraft would avoid the belt's most dangerous parts. So basically, they're saying they figured out a less dangerous route through the Van Allen belts and steered the course to avoid killing everybody. I mean, I want to believe that we went to the moon, but you're making stretches, boys. You're making my brain hurt about that stuff. Several factors worked in the favor of the minimum exposure trajectory. We all know the Earth's axis is tilted at 23.5 relative to the elliptic plane. In 1969, the magnetic North Pole was displaced from the geographical North Pole by 11.4. Therefore, in 69, the Van Allen radiation belts could have had a maximum inclination of 34.9 with respect to the elliptical. The ideal path of Apollo would have been through the north or south magnetic poles because that is where there was no belts. However, that would have also meant burning a lot of fuel to get into the lunar orbit plane. The geomagnetic plane being inclined relative to the elliptical effectively resulted in the location of the TLI point of Apollo 11 orbit being very close to the descending node of the geomagnetic plane. The elliptical nature of the transfer orbital means that it is an apogee will be at the same altitude as both. What? Show me pictures. Okay, here we go. Pictures. Holy bejeebies, man. Look at all that stuff. They could have just said, yo, we picked the best path and didn't have as much radiation, and the dude survived. That's what we did. That's what we did. All right. Enough of that. Longest show in recorded history, an hour and 13 minutes. And I still don't know if it happened. I want to say that it happened. I want to say back then there wasn't any of that. Oh, you can't do that. Because there wasn't anybody smart enough to say, well, you can't do that. It was like, well, shit, we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. Don't tell me I can't do it. Because we're going to do it. And they did it. That's what we're going to say. They said they could, and they did. More than once. So, more than once. All right. If you've hung around this far, if Robert and Garthok are still asleep or still awake, kudos to them. Like I said, to me, the two biggest things are just the sheer, and this only adds to it, to get through the Van Allen belt, to thread the needle, to get through the hole, that doesn't kill everybody. Then to get there and back through the hole that doesn't kill everybody, to me, those would be the biggest things to explain, you know, how it was a hoax or how it really happened. It's just, the physical evidence, the photography, the telemetry back and forth. They talk about people listen to hours and hours, have looked and got FOIA requests for unseen NASA footage, stuff that they just left on the cutting room floor, that kind of stuff is supposedly even a bigger, hoopla than this. So if I can figure out the dude's name in the episode of Joe Rogan's show, then I'll put it in the description or something like that. And you can find it on Spotify. That's where I listen to them all. Joe Rogan Experience. So anyway, if you've made it this far, my hat's off to you. If you haven't made it this far, you know what? I understand. I understand completely. Sometimes I wonder how I make it this far. All right? Like, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Send me a comment. I love the comments. Let me know what you think. Give me some ideas. If you don't like what I'm putting out, let me know. Give me another idea. Let me talk about something that you want to hear about, or better yet, drop me a line, get on the show, call in, get a video. We'll do video chats. We'll do all kinds of stuff. Whatever you want to do, just let me know. And I appreciate everybody that's watched, that subscribes to the channel, that keeps up with it. And all right, the regular dudes probably, zonked out. What time is it? It's probably 10. Yep, 10:19. Time for old men to be asleep. All right, that's me. Sayonara. See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile, that kind of stuff. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Yes, I want you to keep that.